So we're looking at about 40 million, but we do need to sign close to 20 plus players to round out this roster. So that does leave a lot of, the math doesn't, unless everybody's coming back for 1 or 2 million, that means that there are going to be some losses as far as, cap casualties, maybe players that aren't able to, stick around. So let's talk about that. Which players let's assume that we have that 40 million number that you came to, which I think is reasonable. Which players can the 49ers afford to re-sign? And then which players are going to end up possibly being cap casualties, because obviously not everybody's going to be able to get paid.
So looking at it last time when we were talking about the 49ers potential offseason, two names that I brought up as 49ers must re-signs were DJ Jones and Laken Tomlinson. But right now, as it seems, Laken Tomlinson, he's a maybe because it looks like he's starting up talks with the 49ers ahead of free agency. But Laken Tomlinson is expected to have a good amount of bidders in free agency. And the 49ers probably aren't going to get in a bidding war, especially with teams like the Bengals, who are extremely offensive line needy and could go the route like the Chiefs last offseason and overpay to sign the top guard of the market. Joe Thuney from the Patriots was signed to the Chiefs last year on a 5-year, $80 million deal. And, the Bengals or a team like that could look to overpay for a guy like Laken Tomlinson because they want that protection for their young quarterback. So looking at it, if the 49ers are able to get a deal done with Tomlinson before free agency, then I'm happy. But if the 49ers aren't, I don't think that I don't think they're going to bring him back just because of the bidding war potential. And then marking John Lynch's words about DJ Jones throughout the entirety of this time, while I thought he was a solid player to bring back before, I just think his cap, like the expected value of DJ Jones is going to outprice himself out of the 49ers range. And while he wants to come back, just doesn't seem like the price is going to be right. And it doesn't seem like the 49ers are going to move forward with Jones, but rather save that money, which could be 6 to 8 million annually, and instead go after a guy, or sorry, not go after, but have a guy like Javon Kinlaw work alongside Arik Armstead. Because in reality, any player who plays with Arik Armstead, who's so underrated in both the run and the pass, is going to play well because you have a guy like Arik Armstead who frees up you on the inside, and that's going to help. And Javon Kinlaw does possess that 3-down potential, although he's been injured. I do think that the 49ers could choose to move on with Javon Kinlaw as well as add depth in free agency. But players that the 49ers can actually afford to re-sign, one guy that I still think I'm fairly high on in coming back, that's Jason Verrett. And I think the 49ers, after last season where Jason Verrett tore his ACL, he signed a 1-year, $5.5 million incentive-based deal. I do think that he comes back on a similar incentive-based deal in 2022, although it probably goes for less money, which is better for the 49ers because what we've seen, Jason Verrett plays at a near Pro Bowl caliber when he's healthy for the entirety of the season. And that we saw that in 2020 where he was at a near Pro Bowl level. So getting that guy on a cheap deal in 2020 for 2022, I think that that's a fairly solid signing for the 49ers. And also, if it doesn't work out, if he doesn't respond well, since it's incentive-based, you could move on from him before the start of the season. So you're giving yourself flexibility there. And another guy that I think could potentially bring back Raheem Mostert, he fits the best in the system. His vision is definitely great. And if you look to draft another guy, you already have a young group. A guy like Raheem Mostert could be a leader in that group while also splitting carries with the remainder of this 49ers running back group if you don't look to target in the draft. Other guys, Maurice Hurst, he's an under-the-radar name. He signed on a cheap deal last year, couldn't play for a majority of the year because of injury. I do think the 49ers bring him back because he's solid defensive tackle depth. Jaquiski Tartt, I know a lot of people aren't necessarily that willing to bring Jaquiski Tartt back. I still think that Jaquiski Tartt, if you bring him back, guess what? You remove one of the concerns on your roster heading into the draft at safety, and potentially can go BPA for the remainder of your picks, which I think would be a better strategy for the 49ers than the strategy that they've gone to in previous drafts, where they've potentially chosen need over BPA, which has kind of hindered their process. Like, when they drafted Mike McGlinchey at 9 because they had a need at tackle. And so looking at it, I think if you re-sign Jaquiski Tartt, who's expected to be fairly cheap at this moment, you could definitely have a potential to get BPA in the draft, which could potentially give you the best draft class that you could potentially possibly get. So those are a couple names just throwing out there.
Now, I know last year we saw the 49ers be pretty aggressive as far as signing a lot of depth when it came to the defensive line specifically. You
Yeah.
did mention Maurice Hurst. What about a guy like Arden Key? Is that somebody that would fit in as far as maybe a guy, if they do lose DJ Jones, a guy that might be able to slide in there and play that position in case the Javon Kinlaw can't stay healthy, which we've seen, unfortunately, the last few years?
I think Arden Key definitely has the potential to be brought back. He was one of the other guys on that list. But the thing with Arden Key, it's unknown right now how much money he might command because Arden Key had a very, very solid season for the 49ers. He had 8 sacks over the entire of the year. But the thing with Arden Key is he doesn't play over 50% of the defensive snaps like you want maybe from a 3-down guy that you're going to pay 6 to 8 million a year. And so Arden Key throughout there wasn't a single game this season that he played over 50% of the snaps, whereas a guy like Samson Ebukam for the 49ers played in 50% of the snaps on multiple games. And I know Samson Ebukam's, right now worth $5.5 million. So do the 49ers choose to bring back Arden Key? It's definitely a possibility because both sides have expressed interest to want them back. But Arden Key did say on his live Instagram this week when he was just recording for fun that the 49ers, the reunion is probably only going to happen if the money's right. And with a lot of teams at a need for edge and a lot of teams seeing how Arden Key performed last season, they might be willing to overpay him, which is why he might price himself as well out of the 49ers range, especially if he commands around that 6 to 8 a year rather than a potential 4 or 5 million a year.
What about a guy like Jordan Willis?
I think he definitely could be brought back because Jordan Willis is another underrated guy where he doesn't necessarily play a ton of snaps. So the snaps that you see him, he's definitely beneficial, but he doesn't necessarily play a ton of snaps, which might not provide value to other teams. And so Jordan Willis, he's shown an ability to just perform in the system. And a lot of defensive players on the 49ers, they're always sharing praise about the 49ers. Charles Omenihu said this 49ers team kind of changed his career around, and he's been also another one of those productive defensive ends in limited snaps. So Jordan Willis definitely is a guy who could be brought back, good special teams player, which is what the 49ers also need heading into 2022, and a solid defensive end.
Now let's switch to the other side of the ball. Some key free agents there. Clearly a guy like Jauan Jennings at wide receiver, Brunskill, who even though people are kind of hit or miss with, he obviously played a lot for the 49ers as well as a starter at that right guard position. And then I think we just saw Brendel got brought back, I think.
Brendel got brought back on a 1-year deal. I think today. Yeah. But looking at it, yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was talking about those two players. So what exactly do you think happens with those two guys?
Yeah, so Jauan Jennings is something that we call, I believe Jauan Jennings is an exclusive rights free agent, similar to a couple other 49ers players. So what an exclusive rights free agent means is Jauan Jennings can be brought back on a 1-year minimum deal, and nobody else can offer him a contract because he was a 7th round pick and he's had less than 2 years, or I think it's like less than 3 years of service.
Yeah.
So Jauan Jennings can be brought back. I expect him to be brought back. Whether they negotiate a long-term deal, be it like a 3-year deal worth maybe 3 to 5 million in total, I don't know, or whether it be that 1-year deal. But Jauan Jennings definitely could be brought back because he's one of the better run blockers on this team, and the 49ers value that at the receiver position, especially when they're targeting depth. And then the other guy you said, Daniel Brunskill, I do believe he got tendered earlier this week, and it was one of the under the radar newses. But I think the Athletics' David Lombardi did report that Daniel Brunskill has been tendered by the team, and I don't think that anyone is going to offer him the value, or is going to offer him and forfeit that draft compensation. So I do think that Daniel Brunskill also gets brought back. And when we saw in 2020, Daniel Brunskill was a fairly solid swing tackle for this team. That's something that they lacked last offseason after Justin Steele got injured with that. I think it was a torn ACL or a torn Achilles. So he could return to that role of swing tackle and be the backup left tackle, right tackle, or even slide inside and play guard should injuries occur, especially if Jalen Moore gets kicked on to the inside.
Awesome.